So I want to take you on a little tour of this piece that I've done with what I think of as extra fancy stitching. This is not just running stitches. I'm going to zoom in now and show you some individual patches, and I'm just going to take you kind of on a tour of this piece. So what I do for this kind of stitching, instead of just filling in a piece with running stitches like I would normally do for big stitch quilting, I use the design of the fabric as a guide to embellish it and just really make it super fancy. So this piece is just a plain orange with white polka dots. And then I went in and I put a little plus in between each set of polka dots and a French knot on each polka dot. So I did that first over the entire fabric, and then I went in with a pink thread and I just connected all of those dots in a kind of a diamond grid. So I'm going to zoom out now so you can see the overall effect of that. This one is much more simple. The original fabric is just this pink with yellow rings on it, and I just did a green French knot inside each one of those dots. So you still see the white circles, just like on this one you still see the white polka dots, but the center is now filled in with a little French knot, which gives it a nice bumpy texture. This fabric is just a straight up gingham. Gingham is really fun because that grid work gives you great guides for your patterns. So on this one, first I did an X in yellow thread in each dark green square, and then I went back over that X, zoom in really, really far, and just did like a tiny little plus in the center of the X. And on each white square, I did a plus sign, and then zoomed it, took over the center of that plus, the intersection of the two threads, and did a little X. So that just gives a nice overall pattern. This one is one of my favorites. So the original fabric is just these kind of ovals with rings around them. And I did, inside each light pink oval, I made a dark pink star. And inside each dark pink oval, I did a light pink star. This one isn't any particular stitch. I'm going to include links to tutorials for all of these stitches. This one is not any stitch in particular, it's just some straight lines. This one is super simple. The original fabric is here. It's just these asterisks and dots on it. And I just, in a contrasting color thread, went over every asterisk with straight stitches and every dot with a French knot. Just gives it nice texture. So I'm going to scooch all the way over to this green stripe. And for this one, I just did some stripes right over it. So see those yellow stripes in the fabric? I just did yellow back stitching. And then that medium green stripe that's in the center of the two darker green stripes, right here, on those I did a series of chain stitches. So it gives it a fatter, wider stripe and a different texture. So this is the overall look that patch will be. I'm showing it to you now before it's completely finished so that you can see the before and after. So this is a nice purple batik with these kind of irregular V shapes, and I just stitched over those with Lazy Daisy stitches. And I'm doing just every other row of those so that this is what the final look is going to be like. So I've got some light blue stitches and alternating with light purple stitches and then back to the light blue. So it'll be stripes of texture. This is just a chevron fabric with alternating orange and yellow stripes. And I just did an orange stripe in the center of each yellow stripe and a yellow stripe in the center of each orange stripe. Both of those done with just simple back stitching. This one is a little fancier. It started out as this, what I immediately thought of this as a lattice kind of pattern. And so I wanted to emphasize the flower part of it. So I did just some little white daisies, just using a simple Lazy Daisy stitch in each diamond, with a yellow center, and then I thought it needed a little bit of green too, so you can see this is what the finished bit looks like, where at the intersections of the lattice, everywhere that the lattice stripes come together, I just did a little green star. Down here, I've got just a simple yellow fabric with a white kind of leafy viney pattern, and I just went over that with a blue backstitching. Nothing fancy, and you can still see the white around it, so I've added another layer of pattern to that. This fabric has this cute little elephant print on it. I don't usually do a lot of novelty prints in these, but I saw that and I immediately thought that that little water coming out of his trunk would be cute to do in little simple individual Lazy Daisy stitches. So that's what I did there. And then this last fabric is just these kind of swoopy curves of polka dots. And I started out just stitching over those, over some of the curves, just an occasional top of a fan shape with a French knot on each dot. That didn't show up quite as much as I wanted to, so I added another layer of stitching beneath it. So there's a second row with the French knots beneath that first row, so that the overall look is like this. So I'll have links to all of those individual stitches, and just I'm going to zoom out again. So this is going to be another pillow cover, and it's really just kind of like a stitch sampler on there, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So one thing to think about though is this isn't great for a full quilt, and I'm going to flip this over now. Sometimes the stitches, the carrying threads between stitches can be too long. Like you wouldn't want this exposed on the back of a quilt because you could snag something under that. Or here's the stitches between the daisy centers. So some of these it would be okay. These are the stitches on the back of those stripes of Lazy Daisy stitches. And this is the back stitch, the back of the back stitching that's on the chevron. Some of them would be okay on the back of a quilt, but a lot of them, and some of the most interesting ones, would have just too long of a carry stitch. So this will work fine for a pillow because this will all be just inside the pillow cover and I don't need to worry about the wear and tear on them. But it wouldn't work as well for a quilt. If you decided to do this for a quilt, you would probably need to use Quilt As You Go and put a second backing on it. So that is some super extra fancy stitching.